folks, Andrew with Las Casitas Vineyards here today. And today I'm joined by Brandon. Brandon, you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Brandon Wood. I work at Whole Foods Market in Dublin. I also do the cheese parlor on the side.
And you are a certified cheese professional, right?
I am. I'm a certified cheese professional, which is CCP. It means I am pretty much a sommelier for wine, but I do that for cheese.
Nice. So last week we had the pleasure of getting together with Kurt and Brent and tasted some wines and cheeses. We had 10 wines. I think we ended up with, we had 10 cheeses. I think we ended up with about 16 wines. And we had that all taped and recorded for you folks. But being the amateur that I am at YouTube right now, it got deleted. So we're just going to give you a quick rundown of some nice cheese and wine pairings that we went over and we thought were very special. Just so if if you're going a little stir crazy during shelter in place and you need something to kind of get you through, to bring you back to some normalcy, some cheese and some wine will take you to a happy place. How does that sound, Brandon?
Sounds great.
All right.
And it was great.
We're going to start off with Bonhomme. So what is that cheese?
Bonhomme is a French double cream brie. It is, double cream means it's 65% fat or more in dry matter, which is a longer conversation, but just a good old solid double cream brie out of France.
Nice. And we paired that with two different wines. We paired it with our estate Verdelho and then also our estate Petit Syrah. Both kind of interesting and bringing different flavors out of both the cheese and the wine together.
Yeah.
Next up, we had the St. Pat. What is that one about?
The St. Pat is the Cowgirls Creamery's seasonal cheese. It comes out during March, typically, for St. Patrick's Day, and they actually go out in their local foliage and grab nettles out of that foliage, and they wrap it around their cheeses, and it adds a very unique flavor, super fun and really interesting. And this year's is out of sight, and it's still available at your local cheese counters.
Nice. Yeah, that was a great cheese. I really liked what the nettles brought to it. We ended up pairing it with Obscurus. And Obscurus is a mystery blend, dark and unknown. When Brent makes it, he doesn't tell anyone what's in it. He literally told me the first time he made it, and I told too many people, so I got taken off the list. I no longer know. Just him, just the winemaker knows what's in there. So that's kind of a cool blend that we do. We have a reserve, which is aged for a year longer in the barrel, and then we have an estate. Same wine, same makeup, just longer barrel age, so a little different aspect there for us. Very cool wine, went very well with the cheese, brought out those earthy tones, definitely those nettles.
Made the cherry pop too in the wine.
Yeah.
Really well done. Another cool thing about that pairing was, and on the original video, Brant talked a lot about how he figures out how he tests the grapes in the barrels throughout his aging process, and then that's what determines the blend that he creates for Obscurus. And it was really, really cool and super interesting. So if you're ever in the winery and you have an opportunity to talk to Brent about it, it's a really cool discussion to have.
Yeah, I mean, he'll start each individual varietal in different barrels and then start to combine them. So depending on what stage of the barrel aging process he's in, it could be just one varietal, or it could be 7 or 8, depending on what he really wants. So it's
super interesting.
It's really cool. Next up, we had a cheese that we kind of just threw in there at the last minute. I thought I had bought 10 cheeses, I only bought 9, but we didn't have some queso Oaxaca on site because for my fancy flight on Sundays, I melt some queso Oaxaca on top of a sweet pepper popper, and so we had that. We didn't melt it, which is unusual because queso Oaxaca definitely usually is a melting cheese. What do you know about Oaxaca?
Just that it's pretty much what he just said. It's a great melting cheese, pretty mild, very similar to a mozzarella, but it's just got a different chemical structure to it, so it allows it to melt in a much easier way. But mozzarella is a great melting cheese too, so pretty darn similar. A little bit more salt characteristic on it than a mozzarella, but just a really fabulous cheese.
It's like a string cheese that when it's not melted, it's stringy, you pull it apart. And that went with one of our white blends, Verdigris. So Verdigris is a blend of Verdelho, Albarino, and Busan. It really brought out just like the lemon flavors of it. And it added to the cheese. It was really interesting because we didn't think we were going to get that complex of a pairing with
Yeah. Very mild, simple cheese, but the way that it affected the wine and brought out really cool notes in the wine was really fun.
The next up was probably one that I've been talking about for a very long time.
Yeah. Really great pairing.
Yeah, the Holy Cow. What is that cheese about?
Holy Cow is a Alpine style cheese, but it's made in Paso Robles from the Central Coast Creamery, cow's milk. And yeah, they use Propionic bacteria. It creates those little eyes in the cheese, which is pretty classic in a Swiss cheese, but nice and creamy, a little bit of dry notes on the back end, but super pairable and just a really fabulous cheese out of the Central Coast.
Yeah, so I mean, this was not the first time that I had tasted this cheese, and I really like it. It's a very well done cheese. And we paired it with our 2016 Estate Syrah, which is currently unreleased, and looking to be released here in the future. But that's a wine and a cheese that's probably going to go on my fancy flight. We were just so amazed with this Syrah that we were tasting was meaty. It was unctuous. Like it was just
it had girth to it.
It was a lot of toasted notes, almost like fully cooked bacon, almost to the point of burning. Definitely some gamey notes to it, and the cheese just it handled it. It was crazy.
Kind of like wrapped around it and took all of those aggressive notes and brought them down to this really palatable, just structured pairing. It was really well done.
Yeah, and then the gaminess coming back at the end.
Yeah,
guys,
that's right.
It's an awesome pairing. So look out for that one because that one will definitely be featured in the future. Next up, we had the. Can you pronounce it for me? Boschetto.
Oh yeah, the Boschetto al Tartufo, which is an Italian sheep's milk cheese, which they use truffles in. And I'll tell you what, I'm not a huge truffle fan, but the way that they make this cheese, it allows the truffles to be very simple and smooth. You don't get a little tinginess. You just get this nice, creamy, smooth, truffle, earthy flavor all the way through. Just a really well done Italian sheep's milk cheese.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of truffle cheeses, you just get truffle, you don't get any cheese.
Yeah.
This one was definitely a good balance between both. And we ended up pairing that with our dessert wine.
I know, which I'm sure you love so much.
Not my favorite wine that we produce here at Las Casitas. Casimira is actually a fortified dessert wine made out of Tempranillo. So it's really Tempranillo from 2011 to 2016, fortified with brandy. It runs about 17-18% alcohol. Pretty sweet, really coats the palate, and I think that strong flavor, those dried raisins, golden raisins from the Casimira really played well with the truffle. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. It was really interesting how the cheese took the heat off the Casimira, and it just really mellowed out the dessert wine itself in a way that was very unique, in the way that the wine affected the truffle too was really cool. It took down the earth tones and gave that little bit of brightness to that sheep's milk in the cheese. It was really, really cool pairing.
The next cheese we had, I think, I'll say it, I think it was our most versatile cheese.
Yes,
absolutely. The thing that went and surprised me the most as well. So it was a Parmesan Sorbecchio, right?
Yeah, Parmesan Sorbecchio is an Italian style made cheese, but made in Wisconsin. It's made by Italian cheesemakers, and they're obviously trying to mirror Parmesan Reggiano, which is the king of cheese, the traditional Italian cheese. The only major differences are everything really, but it's made in the United States, so that's a huge difference. But it's not raw, and it uses vegetarian rennet, which Parmesan Reggiano is the exact opposite of that.
Cool, and that cheese, some similar Parmesan flavors to it, for sure, but it went so well, we actually are talking about doing a Parmesan flight, which Kurt and I were talking afterwards. I feel like most people, they think of Parmesan and they think of the stuff they have in their fridge that they just put on top of pasta, right? They've never had actual...
The green shaky can.
Exactly.
Green shaky can, which I'm sure a lot of us grew up on.
Yep, exactly, and so actually having Parmesan that is different from that. That has its place as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that having people experience the versatility of this cheese, I think would be really cool. So we ended up having a tie for this for this cheese with Tempranillo and Albarino. And then we were also like, but wait, our Verdelho and our Barbera work as well. So
went really well.
yeah, just really versatile. Different wines bringing out different flavors and interacting differently and having different palate experiences as well with those different wines. So that would definitely be something that we play around with in the future for just kind of how we approach it and our ideas of what a cheese and wine flight or a cheese and wine experience may even look like.
Yeah, and it was nice to have the opportunity to realize that most cheese flights and cheese pairings with wine are one cheese, one wine, one cheese, one wine, but this made us realize that maybe it would be cool to see how one cheese affects multiple wines across the board, because this cheese did.
Yeah, and awesome cheese too. So next up we have Pleasant Ridge.
Pleasant Ridge Reserve is a pretty famous cheese in the United States, if you're a cheesehead for sure. It's won the most awards out of any cheese made in the United States. It's made at Upland's Cheese in Wisconsin by Andy Hatch. And he is trying to mirror like an Alpine style cheese or a Comté, but I think at this point he's just trying to make the best cheese that he possibly can. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty fabulous.
It's bomb. It's bomb. And that paired with Verdelho and our estate cab. And I want to take this time to just point out a second here that most of these pairings that we've talked about so far have had a red and a white. And I think that's really cool to point out because a lot of times the general public doesn't taste like we have the ability to taste here at a winery, right? We had 10 cheeses laid out, we had 16 wines laid out, and we could go back and forth. And so we have the ability to find things that work and things that don't work. And so the fact that we found cheeses that go with both white and red just kind of goes against the general understanding, or the rules of this needs to pair with this. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. I mean, the cool thing about what we did is we had the opportunity to break those boundaries. A lot of people are like, these are the classic pairings, and we just straight up went against all of those to see if that rule could be broken, and obviously we were able to break it.
Pretty cool. Next up, we have a cheese that I think we spent the most time with, and I think it speaks to the complexity of the cheese itself. It was a 5-year aged Gouda.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So what about that cheese?
Yeah. Well, 5-year at about, I mean, it's a 5-year aged Gouda. It is what it is, right? It says it in the name, but it's from Holland. But the cool thing about Goudas is about 18 months, they start to tend to go a little bit sweet, create a little bit more of those tyrosine crystals. And the tyrosine is those little white little crystals that you see in all of those cheeses. It's not salt, it's actually called tyrosine. But they start to go sweet, start off with little caramely notes, but then it starts to hit about 2 years, 3 years, you start to get more bitter, more butterscotch, and really, really like intense flavors in the cheese. So it was fun to try and pair it with some wines, which we did spend a lot of time trying to do.
We started originally we really like the Petite Syrah, and I was struggling with it because the 3-year aged Gouda had been on my fancy flight in the past, and so I had ideas in my head and expectations that weren't really working.
Yeah.
We tried it with honey. We tried to add a little sweetness to it.
I mean, we started going into the cupboards.
Yeah.
To figure out a way to get this cheese to pair with something.
So what was that? Yeah, we were just talking about what, on the fancy flight, when we were doing it, we were pairing it with the Chardonnay. And the Chardonnay was pulling out the fat from that cheese and making it almost smooth, which is really crazy because that is hard as cheese you can find. Yeah. And so I was struggling with it, and we finally kind of got to the point where Brent just broke down and went and got some Chardonnays that we hadn't released. One of them actually, our 19 Chardonnay, we're not even going to be selling. Literally, Zephyr Bar and Grill in downtown Livermore bought everything we had.
Oh.
So it's the Zephyr collaboration.
Okay.
If you go to Zephyr Bar and Grill and you see the Zephyr collaboration, the white line, that's Loftus Vineyard Chardonnay. And that's actually a really delicious wine. And so we even broke into some of that, just trying to find everything. We ended up really liking it with the Petite Syrah. Yeah. And we ended up liking it with an 18 Chardonnay. That kind of mirrored those images, but the butterscotch, just the butterscotch and the caramel, I can still taste it in my mouth right now.
And the way, like the fudge fudgy texture. Once it breaks down on your palate, the way that it would stick to your teeth almost like a candy.
Yeah, just a really unique and interesting cheese that I think people should definitely try out.
Super fun.
Second to last cheese we had was the Oma.
Yeah, Omavon Trap. It is made it's made in Vermont by the Cellars of Jasper Hills. Pretty famous creamery in upstate Vermont, churning out some pretty awesome stuff. But this is a wash rind cheese, so they take the cheese itself and they wash it with a salt brine, and then they put it in a room where it's going to be at the right humidity to collect the right microflora to create a really like sticky orange rind that provides a lot of meaty notes, a lot of funkiness, some mushroomy notes, cauliflower, brothiness. I mean, this cheese is extremely diverse in flavor profile, and it's fun wheel to wheel because it's very different.
Yeah, and so this is the point. I watched the video 3 times, I think, by the way. And this is the point in the video where we just get a little bit over the top with how we're doing things now at this point. I think the wine's starting to hit a little bit, and we're just, but, you know, the rind adds so much to that cheese that when you have it with and without the rind, it's a completely different experience. And how it interacts with the wine is going to be completely different as well, right?
Yep.
And it's just, yeah, it's just a really funky cheese. I really, in a good way, I really like that cheese.
And we were trying to figure out like how we would serve this to a customer, because we want the customer to taste the rind with the pairing, and it's hard to do that with certain cheeses, right? Because the rind's only on 2 sides. So we had to force ourselves to make sure we were trying every bite with rind, with the pairing.
Right. And so we went back to the Syrah. That was one of the pairings we liked. You know, again, that funkiness from the Syrah just kind of mirroring what's going on there. But then I tried it with the 19 Chardonnay, and surprisingly, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And so I do also want to take the time to point out right now, Brent and I talked about this with our Easter candy video, that a lot of times we're looking at wine and food and trying to find things that are parallel, that mirror. When sometimes you want things that are perpendicular. You want things that are opposite, because the contrast can be even more interesting than the mirror effect. Yeah. So there's really a few different ways to pair wine and cheeses or foods, and kind of think the process of thinking about it like that. Yeah. So that Chardonnay was surprisingly
brought out like this weird toasted marshmallow note, and just some really unique flavors. I mean, the whole fun of creating pairings are you're trying to elevate both items, but you're also trying to create a new flavor. Right. And I feel like with this one, we really did. Right. We pulled that off. It was really fun.
Yeah,
it was a unique thing.
Last up is 1924. What is it?
1924 Blue. It is the real deal blue. It is no joke. It is a French blue made by Hervé Mons, which are actually affineurs, which are people who are just really great at aging cheeses, but they also do a little bit of small batch making of cheeses. So this is one of their cheeses, and it is, like I said, a real deal blue. It doesn't hold anything back. It's got all of the funk and grit that you would expect from a real blue, and that's the type of blue I want to be eating.
Yeah, it was delicious for sure. And we, started with the classical, typical, okay, this is a blue cheese, why don't we try it with a dessert wine? Yeah. Did not work.
Didn't work, which proves that classic pairings don't have to necessarily go together.
Exactly. It brought out the heat on the Castanera a lot.
Yeah, totally.
You could feel the alcohol, even more than normal, of it's 17% alcohol.
And it was almost like they separated from each other, like in bad ways. So the blue, all the real, true funkiness of the blue came out way more, and then the heat came out way more in the dessert wine.
And so we ended up settling, we thought our best pairing with this 1924, which is mind-boggling to me because it's one of the more delicate red wines we had. We went with our Tempranillo, and just a light, Spanish-style Tempranillo, cherry, a little white pepper on the nose, but it worked with that blue.
It did.
It really did.
Yeah.
It was really
It toned the blue down, brought the wine up a little bit, and then you got the blue funk on the back end, which didn't ruin the finish of the wine.
Took
Really
away
well
some
done.
of the saltiness of the cheese,
Totally.
and
Absolutely.
it was just a really unique pairing.
Yeah.
So, you know, we were happy to spend a couple hours finding some interesting pairings.
so fun.
When
I mean, I don't normally get to do this stuff, so to get to be a part of it was so much fun for me.
Yeah, and you know, when we open back up, which we will open back up for sure, we will be featuring some of these cheese and wine flights in different ways. But you know, what's your favorite cheese and wine pairing? Let me know down in the comments. Catch us back here doing something crazy again soon. You can follow me on Instagram at LPV Winery Ambassador.
And you can follow me on Instagram at the Cheese Parlor with underscores instead of spaces.
Until next time, stay safe out there, folks.